Well, if she puts them all on that board. On board. Like, at the end. Is this one constant recording, or are we gonna be recording in between each one?
It'll be one for the talks tonight.
So it's constantly recording all like 6 people or whatever you're all.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll do a new one like next week.
It's really Because we saw that, yeah, yours was printed on too, and we're like, but then I was like, oh, well, she has a photography, she has access to the printing level, she did that. They're doing so great. What? That's not good.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone who's joined us online as well as in person. This is week 1 of our BFA Artist Talk series, and the artists who will be talking tonight have their thesis shows currently installed at Trisellini Art Gallery. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so we'll be hearing from these 5 artists this evening. We have a group here in person as well as some people watching online, and we are recording this presentation, so it will be shared in the future. Between each artist, we'll have a couple minutes briefly for questions and answers, and then we'll move on to the next artist in the presentation. Here's a view of the gallery. If you haven't got a chance to see it yet, it's on view now through Saturday at 4 p.m. with a reception Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Up first will be Winter Butts, Sculpture and Expanded Practice BFA student.
Howdy, y'all. Thank you so much for coming. I truly appreciate everyone showing up for this, and it's definitely been a long way here. And for our reception, we will have food, so if y'all want to get some free food. All right, so I'm going to do this. All right, so overall, with a lot of my work, it tends to focus. I have a strong interest in studying mental health with a minor in psych because me and many people close to me have various forms of anxiety, depression. So it's something that's very personal to me, my friends, and family. So I chose that to study in my thesis. Early on I had some very close friends to me, so sorry, little Alvin. So for one of my earlier pieces, I kind of focused just on that hard to get out of bed motion. Because let's be honest, when you get a lot of those thoughts, and that's all, it can make it very difficult just to get up, do stuff day to day. And I end up bleeding into like how, because I feel like when it comes to stress, there's this like image where, you know, you're curled up and helpless, when in reality it can come out as aggression, rage, as I showed in my earlier piece, very depressed thoughts. So that was another thing I try to focus on when doing my work, is that there are many ways these feelings can be displayed. And so that one was just focused on like the paralyzation of it. And this ended up being my, I want to say like my big piece, kind of like the main focus of it, like having that weighed down sense of just trying to keep on pushing despite a lot of these feelings. The inspiration behind choosing a rabbit for each of my ongoing pieces is that it's one of these creatures that's like very cute, very cuddly, and you think it's the sweetest thing ever. But once you start to interact with it, you realize it's a very easy, stressed out creature. And that takes a lot of management and really taking the time to understand it. So yeah, so I don't know, like, if there's any questions.
I have a question. Can you talk about like how you made your sculpture and like, what it's made out of?
Yeah, so now for the base itself, because I didn't want it to get too heavy, I did a mixture of foam, crumpled up newspaper, wood, just about anything to get it standing. And then did a layer of plaster over that to kind of like hold it up. The main material, which is this paper mache, kind of like a newspaper pulp, very similar process to how you would make paper, dyed with ink and mixed with an insane amount of glue. Because it does take a long dry period to work with, but it becomes very hard and durable. Yep, what's up?
You talked a lot about mental health, but it seems like you were using like rabbits as your motif throughout this.
Yes.
Why the focus on rabbits?
Because they're an animal that gets stressed out very easily. It does, which I apologize. I hope I don't ruin rabbits for anyone. They can become partially destructive, especially when you have just like destroying like their homes around them, or you'll have a case in a mother rabbit where she will kill her babies under stress of a predator. So little situations like that inspire me to choose the rabbit, so that way I can include the fact that there are different ways to interpret. Which, like, now if I don't answer anyone's question, like, you're more than welcome to re-ask me.
Was your choice of materials based off of just like what you had access to, or were they like purposeful for the piece itself, if that makes sense? Like why you use plaster and all that?
Now, for the base itself, it was just for the fact of making sure it will stand on its own. It was more of a functional choice. The pulp outside, I chose because if you like spike and manipulate it a certain way and you try to touch it, you will cut and injure yourself. And just because it has like that more horrific look to it.
Also, yeah, I definitely love the texture you got out of it, and it's very uniform throughout the piece. I think it looks really beautiful.
Thank you.
I don't know if you talked about why you chose the color black for the main sculpture, but why did you choose it?
I chose it because one of the biggest prevalent signs personally for anxiety is like there's this pit in your chest that'll sit there. And so black, I know, is like a commonly associated color with that pit in your chest. And I felt like that was the color that was going to get my message across the easiest, as opposed to red, which, you know, danger. So, is there any other questions? Well, thank you guys again so much for showing up. We have another absolutely amazing artist, Kelly Ogg, who's going to be showing some of her pieces.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Kelly. I'm presenting my thesis work, Wonders. I'm a photography and integrated media major. So Wonders is essentially a direct result of my personal connection with the wonders of nature and how spirituality can exist within it. The show is also kind of to show my development as a photographer, an artist, and a student. So just as the pandemic affected many other people, it affected me and my artwork. I didn't have access to like the dark room and like film cameras, so it got me to really dive into digital photography. I became interested in like duplicating images and reflecting them on each other. As you can see here, this is a series I did for one of my classes called Children's Games. It discussed like childhood and nostalgia. I really enjoyed searching for areas that like mesh well together. This isn't for like my thesis show images. This is just to show you like kind of the process of how I got there. When I first started looking for like what to do for my thesis work, I knew I wanted to do something about religion. I grew up with a really religious like background. I went to Catholic school until college and grew up in the Catholic Church. And it's obviously like affected me as a person. So I really wanted to do something about that. I made these images recreating the Last Supper with a spiritual essence to them. I got some feedback on them, and people said I either needed to take a step more literally or take a step back and do a more abstract approach. So I ended up taking a step back from this and doing something more abstract. And that's kind of how I stumbled upon Wonders, my thesis work. As a young adult, I'm kind of searching for meaning of life, searching for like what I'm supposed to do with my time here, like what should I do? And I'm still like searching for more of a purpose in life. So that's kind of what my thesis is about. It's kind of also about religion no longer satisfying my curiosity. So that's kind of what got me into taking these like spiritual walks that I go on in nature. I'm searching for small pieces of wonder and spirit and being okay with not finding a straight answer to everything. Most of these images are taken around Athens. So like Stroud's Run, like by the lake and the beach, also Sunday Creek, which is I went like 15 minutes from here to take this image. And when I'm taking these images, I'm keeping in mind how they might look when I reflect them so that they can look seamless or there's pieces I can mesh together well. This is an artist that really inspired me, Tim Walker. Our works might look very different, but I really enjoy the way that he creates an entirely new world for us to absorb, but you still see pockets of reality in his images. And that's really kind of what I strive to be as a photographer. Also for my research, I really had to do a lot of research into Photoshop because I really only knew the basics of Photoshop until this year. So I sought out professors, watched a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how to do this. So a lot of my research included Photoshop too. And this is an image at Stroud's Run where the lake was melting, but then some pieces were really frozen. I just thought it was really lovely. So through these walks, I found a sense of spirituality behind water, ice, earth, sky, and the air we breathe. Through doing this work, I discovered just as a series of images reflect on themselves, I'm reflecting on these small wonders that exist in reality. So, thanks. Are there any questions? Don't be
So for you,
afraid.
is like the act of meshing the photos together, like a way to represent this idea of reflecting?
Yeah,
Is that right?
it is kind of a way like therapeutic too. I'm like searching for, it's like a lot of searching through like my walks are searching, like in Photoshop, I'm searching for pieces that mesh well together. So I guess like searching is a part of my practice in that too.
How did you decide to like display them on the wall?
I changed my mind a lot. I originally thought they were all going to be horizontal in a line. And then I thought they were all going to be vertical. And then I did a last minute change when we got to the gallery and looked at the space and looked at the stuff that was going to be around it. I kind of decided I wanted to do something different. And I just thought this made the most sense, made the best use out of this space because I didn't want everything to be too crowded if I put everything right next to each other on the wall. I also think it's kind of resembles a cross, which kind of goes along with my concept also.
When you're taking photographs, are you actively searching for a special ingredient, or is it kind of like instinctual, like you come across it and you know, or does it have to like spark something?
I think it's like instinctual, like on these walks, I'm not necessarily like holding my camera the entire time, just like taking pictures wherever. I'm kind of like walking and then just like looking around, and then I see something that might be interesting, and then I kind of investigate it more and then take a photo of it. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but yeah.
So Cassidy online has her hand raised. I think if you exit out, you might be able to, or
Okay.
I don't know if she talks, if that just works.
I said I can try talking to help.
She might have to also type her comment in the chat.
So if you can't hear me, I can type in the chat.
Cassidy.
Typing it right now.
Okay, cool.
Can you hear me? No? Okay.
If you go view full screen, it'll go back on the
Okay, will the comment just pop up?
I'll read it for you.
Okay, cool.
It's hard when you're sharing your screen, you can't see those things. So I pulled it up here. So she asked, can you talk about your choice of removing the horizon line?
Yeah, I find that the horizon line can kind of take you out of these like spaces. I feel like the horizon line gives you too much information on what you're looking at. For example, like the ice one, I feel like that one is very abstract, and if you were to see the horizon line, you might be kind of pulled out a little bit, and you would already know what's going on. So I like that there's a sense of mystery in these images, and I want people to come close to them and really look and try to figure out like what kind of angle we're looking at, or just like what we're looking at in general. So.
I always like with like photography, it's really interesting, especially like with shopping. It's kind of like you don't really know what the final product is gonna be, so you're trying to achieve something. Like, what was it like what when you were photoshopping? Like, what was like the end goal that you were trying to go for?
I found myself a lot of times like having to really just like go with like whatever the image wanted to do. Sometimes you really, you can Photoshop as much as you want, but sometimes if you go too far with the Photoshop, it just ends up looking Photoshopped, It looks like like it's just been collaged together and it doesn't really look appealing. But so I kind of just like I don't know, I would take my time, I would come back to the images and really edit them. I would like work on like saturation. Saturation was the thing I really worked with these images too. I was kind of just going for something that seems magical but also peaceful. Something that's kind of like removed from reality, but there are like pieces of reality in it. Yeah, thanks for the question.
Can you talk more about the bottom one and like that, like kind of like split contrast? Or, like,
Yeah, so that one is actually slightly different from the other ones because when I flipped it, I actually lowered the opacity on the lower side. So you can see kind of the other side of the image also. I did that because it just like flowed better that way. It didn't want to be like pieced together. It kind of wanted to just exist on top of it. And I think because there's no like harsh lines, it just like flows very well. So I don't, that's just that one, that's an example of how like I wasn't trying to like force things. That's just like kind of what that image wanted to do in that case.
One last question for.
What was your, like, I guess, what was your choice for not putting like a frame or like just hanging it on the wall flat?
Yeah. So last semester I went to the Van Gogh exhibit at the Kennedy Museum, and a lot of the images were straight up on the wall, and I really enjoyed it. And they were very large too, and I just thought it was very appealing. And I feel like when something's directly on the wall and there's nothing surrounding it, people feel like they can like walk up close to it. They can like search for things is what I really wanted to happen. I just feel like it's more approachable that way, if that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And now we have Madeline who's painting and drawing. Hello, everyone. My name is Madeline. I'm a BFA in the painting and drawing major, and I'm originally from Canton, Ohio. I really enjoy painting landscapes and nature scenes, but as I like approached my thesis and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I knew that I wanted to do something like personal and create something that reflected my identity. But in the process, I ended up avoiding landscapes because I didn't think they were conceptual enough, and I wanted to be seen as a real artist. So I explored a lot of different things, but like whenever I had a break from class, like and created projects for myself, I would end up painting landscapes. So I just decided to embrace that and paint landscapes for my thesis. I decided to try to focus on what the landscapes meant to me and why I was so connected to them. And I realized that the landscapes for me are a way to escape reality. While I'm painting them, I'm imagining myself in these places. I decided to paint national parks and places that exist in real life so that I can think about and reflect on my dreams of traveling to these places. So a lot of the pieces are national parks, and they're all places out west because I've actually never been out west, and I want to travel out west someday. And then as I'm painting these, I'm also thinking about the reality of traveling and how it's not accessible to everyone. Because I haven't had the opportunities to travel because I don't have enough money and time. And I know this is true for a lot of people. And another reality of traveling is that it's not that great for the environment due to like plane rides and driving uses up gas and stuff. So I'm torn between wanting to travel to these places and also not wanting to negatively impact the environment anymore. But these pieces also, since I'm like painting them and like they are an act of me preserving the landscape and bringing it to myself because I'm not able to travel, but also because of the climate crisis and the way that these landscapes are already being negatively impacted by the environment. I'm not sure like how much longer they'll be here. So these pieces are a way of preserving them, and they serve as a souvenir for places that might not exist in the future. Any questions?
I have one. How did you go about choosing your reference pictures for each of these places? Since often, like when looking up pictures of natural parks and stuff, like in Hocking Hills and stuff, they're very idealized pictures of these places at a very specific moment in time. So I was curious how you went about looking for these reference pictures since you haven't been.
I chose places that I want to travel to and places that like seem really inviting, the pictures themselves, because it kind of goes with my concept of wanting to travel there.
What were some of the things you tried doing that weren't landscapes? And then second part of that question is like, what about them do you think pushed you back towards landscapes?
I tried doing some other stuff like, but it's just I tried doing like portraits, but I really didn't know what to paint besides landscapes. Landscapes just come like so much more naturally to me. Yes.
How do you think like your experience growing up like in Canton, Ohio? I don't know part of Ohio that is, but like northern. Thank you. But like Ohio topography and like landscapes are very different than Western landscapes.
Yeah. I think that it just makes these landscapes like seem so much more like a dream to go to because Ohio isn't the same. Any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I saw these works in person earlier today, and something that struck me about them was color choice and like how vibrant the colors were. I guess my question would be about lighting, like how did you make those decisions, and were you trying to like capture the sun in a specific way, or were you altering the images in any way to make them more vibrant?
Altering them to make them more vibrant because I just know that like being in these places in real life is like so much of a better experience than seeing it on a little like square. So I was trying to counteract for that and make it more like of a better experience. Anyone else? Any other questions? I can introduce Nyla Latham is next.
All right. Hi, I'm Nyla Latham. I am a photography and integrated media major. I am also a graphic design major. When it comes to my photography practice, I majority do a lot of my work on my mental health and how it affects me or like the changes in my life, according to like what's going on right now. My show is called 1,000 Miles Per Hour because that's how I describe my anxiety. So anytime I'm having a bad anxiety attack, I'll like say like my mind's going 1,000 miles per hour, and it just means it doesn't stop. It's like full speed ahead. So that is the reason why it's called 1,000 miles per hour. So these are my beginning images. This is also done in digital photography. I wanted this idea of like masking how you feel in your emotions. So when I'm having an anxiety attack and I'm in class or I'm out in the world, you really won't know it unless I'm like, man, I can't breathe, like I'm having an anxiety attack, unless I'm saying it. Because no one ever wants to like tell somebody that something's going wrong. So I kept wanting to do this idea of mask. Like mask was just stuck in my head for so long. And my peers and my teachers were like, they liked it more when it was abstract. So I tried to keep pushing that idea of abstract math, so when you can't really tell what it is. But then I went to class one day, and this guy was like, I kept telling him like, if I had another person, like if I was another person, I feel like I'd be a male figure with long hair. He was like, well, since I was brought into it, I don't feel like this shows who I am as a person. So people suggested trying to reinvent what mask can be, and how you can still be a human figure and not use like an object, which I struggle to use like humans in my work because it's a lot more frustrating and harder than when you're just using an object. So this led me to my current work. This is how my show looks. Um, so it was a complete change of perspective. I started using images of myself. I used images of another person and used that person as another telling of me, or as like my anxiety. So it was the other person is basically presenting as my anxiety. So it is another mask in a sense. But I had to step away from that idea of like masking and saying like I'm a real person, I'm a real human being, and masking kind of dehumanizes yourself. So I wanted to push away from that and create images with people. So I like to talk about the irony of how I did all of these images. It was literally inside my apartment with a black tablecloth and a film camera that is a plastic film camera that you need a lot of light to catch the images. So just working on it was anxiety. So like feeling that in the moment of creating these images helped the process of making these images. So literally sitting in a dark room with only purple and red lights, with two people that barely fit in this room, created that feeling of closeness and anxiety and just mind racing and confusion, which was nice. So my images are a big story, so I didn't really put like individual images. So the beginning of the story is that there is anxiety holding over me or above me until the moment that everything begins to change. So like our minds get to collide, our heads begin to swirl into the part where I am a whole different person until I am not me anymore and it's just anxiety talking. So that is basically how the story is told throughout. The reason why my images are pink and purple, pink, red and purple, I feel like those are my aura colors, basically. So like normally everyone knows I have purple hair most of the time. I call that my fun color. It's the times where I feel mostly me. But then there's also red. Red is more my laid back and my chill color. It is still me, but is more of the relaxed version of who I am as a person. So I like the ideas of those colors coming together to make it still me, even though it is another presenting figure in the images. These are just to show you all the images in next to each other as digital images. But yeah, any questions? Charlotte and then
Talk about why you chose like 3 really dark images and 2 really bright images. I know you said the color thing, but like
so the darker images are because when you start out like anxiety, everything goes dark. Like everything, like I feel like Winter said it, everything is black. Everything is, you're not happy, you're not sad, you're just like trying to figure out where the emotions are and you're trying to figure them out. And then as you move across the page, once your anxiety hits, it's like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And you're moving around. So that is more of like a brighter image in my head because I'm not seeing anything, but it is making my brain go like, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this. So it's brightening up to like a negative, like a negative mindset to me.
So I know you said that you used a specific camera.
Yeah.
What was the decision?
So over the summer, I got into plastic cameras. So I bought a Hoga, not a Hoga. I'm sorry, a Diana, and I bought a Diana, and I would take images with that. Also, I'm in love with square images, and they already have like a frame that goes with it. So I really just love how when you take images with it, you don't necessarily know what's coming out because you don't know if you have enough light. You don't know if you are, if it's bright enough. You don't know if it's cloudy. And it's just no telling what's going to happen with these images. Also, the grain in them, immaculate if you like grain in your images. So it was just a lot of things that I love about that camera. I wanted to shoot with it. I told myself like after grad school, after undergrad, I'm only shooting with plastic cameras just because it brings the joy back in like photography for me.
It's kind of same question as I had before. Your choice of not framing.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
Honestly, the same reason why Kelly. So we went to the Van Gogh, and I never seen anyone not frame their images. But then that's not the main reason why. But the other reason why is that I wanted you to feel the anxiety with me. So I feel like if I framed them, you would just see them. Like I wanted you to actually be able to step into the image and say, "Oh, I'm in Nyla's head. That's creepy."
How did you decide on the sizes?
Go big or go home. No, I was kidding. I feel like big is always overwhelming, and I wanted to still create that overwhelming aspect. I mean, if you do like mini images, like you can still get that overwhelming feeling, but I had a theory of go big or go home the entire time, and big always makes me feel anxious. So, Kelly.
Are these like straight out of the camera with like a little tweaking, or are they maybe thrown into Photoshop and messed around?
Actually, for the first time ever, I actually digitally manipulated every image except for the second one. With like the two, I didn't do anything with that, and maybe the middle one, but majority of them are all like manipulated in Photoshop. I also wanted to change the colors and make them more vibrant, so they wouldn't be so dark. But a lot of these are like they weren't straight off the camera. Yeah.
Mine is kind of a note, but it could also form a question.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about it, I'm thinking about like it's kind of an attempt for you to reach like your subconscious mind and like why you feel the way that you do in like certain instances. So I didn't know if you had anything to talk about like your experience with trying to, I don't know, navigate like your subconscious feelings or thoughts or like emotions, I guess, with the work.
Yeah, the only reason why it is a yes is because I wasn't thinking of it as a story. I wasn't thinking of as it being my own mindset and how I was thinking about my anxiety as a whole. But it wasn't until I sat down and I was like, wait a minute, like there's actually steps. There's actually like moments where I'm like my mind's going so fast that I lay there and just try to escape from everything. I try to like leave the whole situation. At hand. So it wasn't until like I sat and actually thought about the story that it was about like how like my mind is no longer mine anymore. It's just whatever it wants to be. wants to happen.
Got a question from Cassidy.
Yeah.
She's asking, how has movement and photo techniques related to showing movement helped you with your process and final images?
So I originally started with painting with light, which is an active movement. So it's just like waving light in front of the camera and creating that movement. I didn't think about how to move a human being until I thought about, if I could do this with light, maybe I could do this with like a human. So like me and my friend would just stand in front of the camera and move around the entire time. I didn't think anything of it when it came to like creating the image until I was like, when you're frustrated, all you're gonna do is like shake your head, or like you like throw stuff, or like you're doing simple things, or your mind is waving. So like you feel like shaking your head is equating to your mind racing. So I really didn't even think about movement while I was creating an image. I thought about movement as I was creating like how the story would play out, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah.
So since you're putting it in Photoshop and manipulating it, what was the reason that you wanted like the film part of it? Like, is it you don't know if it's gonna come out or not? It was just a lot more work or something?
So I like film because of the texture it creates, versus like digital photography. Like if I did digital photos, I was going to print those in glossy texture because they look nicer that way. But I wanted film because it's nice, like not knowing what images can come out and then jumping on top of that and creating the image as you finish. So it is about like what that image takes, but also what can I do to enhance what the film camera took. So that's why I just did film. Any more questions? Cool. All right. Now we have Annika Frogel in printmaking.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Annika, BFA Printmaking. My thesis show is Selective Substance, very much focused on substance abuse and potential causes for that. It kind of reflects a lot of my work prior with mental health. I have done several pieces on substance abuse, so it was something I wanted to explore on a more personal level. So I kind of focused on my mother, my best friend, and for once myself. And this was what it turned out to be. So I mixed digital drawing and plate litho. So all of these smaller pieces on the top are plate lithography, and the bigger pieces on the bottom are digital drawing. I used Procreate. I love that app. This pair is focused on my mother. So when I was about, I want to say 5 years old, my mom became disabled and was basically told by medical professionals that there's nothing we can do. You're probably going to end up in a wheelchair. She was like 30, 35, I think. So she had really hard time with that. And she did struggle a little bit with alcoholism as a way to cope. We're very open about it now. We weren't as much when I was a kid. So I wanted to kind of process that because here recently her physical health has gotten worse. Luckily, we've avoided the wheelchair, but it's coming. So it was kind of a way to process that. So this was where I really started with thesis. And then around the same time, a friend of mine who is a very bad alcoholic ended up getting in trouble with cops and potentially losing his license and everything like that. So I was juggling like, okay, he was my rock for the longest time. How do I help him when he doesn't want to help himself? So I kind of had to sit and process this information. How did he start? Well, he lost a father figure at a very young age and ended up in a bad situation. So he ended up turning to substances. And I chose whiskey for him because that's his favorite thing, to the point like he would send himself to the hospital because he was allergic to Jack Daniel's honey, and he would continue to drink it. Yeah, it was a mess. So kind of process that. I chose to do a reflection in the background for him because it made sense. You know, he was with me ruining his image of himself because there were a lot of things that happened between us that it kind of put a void in our friendship. Yeah, that was intense. And now for the last pair, myself. I have struggled with mental health problems my entire life, at least as long as I can remember. And it only got worse whenever I was in early teen and I was put on Prozac for anxiety, which if anybody knows anything about mental health related medications, they're finicky. And that was not a good situation for me at the time. And so as a way to kind of handle that, both my parents are smokers, my grandmother's a smoker, it was very easy for me to get a hold of cigarettes and nicotine. So that's been my ongoing battle. It's not as extreme as alcohol, but it's very much something I want to quit, and I have a very hard time doing so. So it's important to me. And I wanted to just kind of focus on that for a minute because it is a problem. You know, it's kind of bad when you can't walk to Baker without feeling like you're dying. It's kind of a problem. But yeah, like I said, I just kind of made these as a way to process what I was doing and a way to blend two media that I love a lot. It gave me a chance to research plate lithography because it's something I've never done until this semester. And that's pretty much it. Pretty much all I gotta say.
So my first thought is that I'm really curious, like, if you've shown the people these are about, like, and what they think of, like, how you interpreted their story through art.
The only person in this narrative that's seen the pieces is my mom, because as it stands right now, I have no contact with my best friend. I'm not ready to cross that bridge yet. But she cried the first time she saw them all in the gallery together. She was a little bit apprehensive because I've used her as inspiration for my art quite a bit. But whenever I brought in the alcoholism, because it's something, she's open about it, but it's kind of a personal thing. And yeah, it was mixed at first, and then she saw pieces and she's like, oh wow, I'm okay with that. And definitely urged me to do it again in the future.
Can you talk about like how you do the digital drawing and then like I know nothing about printmaking. How do you find?
Okay, so digital drawing, I just use an iPad and Procreate. And for this, I found reference pictures either on the internet or I took the picture myself and made collages and things like that, brought them into Procreate and put them in black and white, changed all the settings for them that I needed, and just drew directly from the source. And then when I wanted to take the digital files into a plate, I had to run them at a halftone, which I honestly have zero idea how to explain that. I went to printing services. Because my dad works there. I was like, hey, fix it. And he did. But whenever you expose the halftone image, it translates onto the plate and you can print it from there. I got that right?
So, first of all, it's amazingly emotional. Second of all, is there any relation to the sizing of the lithographs compared? I know nothing about printmaking, so I don't know if that's just the size you had to go with. But is there any specific comparison as to why the top ones, which are the lithographs, are sizably smaller than the bottom ones that they relate to?
Mostly because getting into plate lithography, I was horrible at it. So I ended up buying a lot more plates than I needed. So that also meant buying a lot more paper and ruining a lot of paper. So I wanted to go small to kind of save a little bit more money. But I also knew I had the luxury with the digital prints to go larger, which was something I really enjoyed because there's a lot more detail in the bigger prints.
I really love like the spotlights in the top three. What was your choice in including brand names in like the last two?
So the second one was mostly because that was my best friend's drink of choice. And then the last one is what my parents are currently smoking at the moment. And we actually have a room designated to smoking because I have a parrot and we don't want to kill the bird. So I just dug all of the empty cigarette boxes out of the trash can so that I could take the picture. So it was just what I had.
I think these are absolutely gorgeous. Like just to start, definitely way to capture an audience because I kind of just stopped and stared at these for a minute when I was there. I don't even know. I think your just attention to detail too with those spotlights just shining on the stuff. I just love it like so much. Not even a question. I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Kay. Anything else? Any questions from teams? No, not right now. Okay, I think that's it then.
All right, thank you guys for joining us in person and online. I'm going to wrap up our Teams meeting, but you'll be able to view this online if you missed it or need to revisit. Right. I know. Now what do? I haven't done this in so long. Stop recording.